officials or not, to seize offenders, to arrest and conduct them to prison, although there should be not judgment against them. And that what I really want that stuck out, because I've been in places where they said we can't even, if two of us get to the water cooler on the Job.
That's why they break it up. They come and examine what you're doing. What are you doing together?
Right. So
you're talking too long. You're having a conversation.
Right. So yeah.
Schism. Schism operations. Look at schism operations. Mm-hmm. Now look at that training. Look at this training over the years, right? Mm-hmm. Why our people are divided and they accuse each other of it, not knowing they were brain trained to do that for generations.
Well, here's another one that's maybe this is why we don't do this as much as we should have put. Article 15, we forbid Negroes to sell any commodities, provisions, or produce of any kind without the written permission of their masters or without wearing their known marks or badges, and any persons purchasing anything from Negroes in violation of this article shall be sentenced to pay a fine of 1,500 lira.
Now you understand licenses and regulations and why our people don't control businesses on any large scale. Mm-hmm. And without a license, they'll come and confiscate your stuff, including your car that you think is yours, and why the original manufacturer's titles of origin is never given to you, is sent to the corporate state.
Here's a good one. I'm jumping over to 21. Slaves who are disabled from working either by old age, disease, or otherwise, be the diseases incurable or not, shall be fed and provided for by their masters, and in case they should have been abandoned by said masters, said slave shall be adjudged to the nearest hospital, to which said master shall be obliged to pay 8 cents a day for the food and maintenance of each one of these slaves, and for the payment of this sum, said hospital shall have a lien on the plantation masters. Now that sounds like these nursing homes.
Now that's exactly what they are. That's why they take your estate.
Yeah, they sure do. This is interesting.
Once you really study the black codes, you understand the politics. You understand what you're looking at. Even the gentrification of communities, even the lack of allodial titles, the lack of Aboriginal titles, mm-hmm. and that the deeds are not titles of ownership, but are indeed and in fact sharecropping agreements that trick the people think that they own property and they're actually sharecropping. Mm-hmm. And as soon as your work life is up or you're no longer useful to the corporation operations, they tax you out of it. Mm-hmm. And declare it abandoned, even though you're in it.
Yeah.
And so then your children don't get you work all your life and your children have no inheritance. And if they have it, the state taxes them out of it. Wardship tenures. You see?
Right. So I wanted to know if we would, if you clear up the use of UCC.
Well, the UCCs are. Let's talk about uniform commercial codes, because UCCs it's contemporary. Okay. It's actually commercial codes. Okay. So commercial codes are moral principles of substance for substance trade in honor and integrity that are ancient. They're actually ancient Moorish trading routes. When the hybrid Europeans took over, and it took them even up to around 1966 to 68 to convince the last vestige of the republics, which they overthrew, of Texas, known as the Lone Star State, to submit to the operations of the corruptions of the commercial codes used for human trafficking. And that's when they became uniform. Are we clear?
So the reason why
it's called the commercial codes, which are based in honor in trade, are corrupted by the hybrid Europeans and become uniform in 1966, 68 to 68. with the last territory being what you call Allah's Moors, what they call the Alamo.
Is that what
Texas?
Remember
yes.
the Alamo?
Yes.
I went there and I saw it's just the front of the building that's supposedly that's
shot up or whatever.
Shot that's there. And you know how they make something out of something really major.
Yeah.
But when you look, it's like it's no different than the building in the next block right there.
Yeah.
With everything
like it's some kind of big
knocked down but the front.
That's just a landmark of the territory.
Okay.
Yeah. Lone Star. Lone Star.
Right.
State.
Just a different color.
Allah's Moors.
Allah's Moors.
It's called Alamo.
Alamo. Yeah, they call us Mo, right? Mo.
Oh, yeah.
Remember the Allah.
Now, hold on. Now let's look at this. Because remember, everything that the hybrids use is really African, but they use dark side, meaning they take your stuff and turn it negative. So since the United States Corporation Company has been promoted fraudulently as actually being the aggregate land and its relationship to the inheritors of the land, i.e., the nation being under occupation by a foreign jurisdiction of hybrid European colonists of the priesthood of the bishopric of Rome under the Spanish Inquisition, i.e., colonial powers. They take over the trade route and they make agreements with each other. That's why it becomes uniform. That's why all of the stock is based, and the treasury bonds are based on human chattel, which you'll see in Clinton papers when they're raising funds.
Oh, really?
They measure human capital. And it's said bluntly in the papers, human capital. But how many of our people see stuff and don't see stuff? Because they don't want to see it.
Many of us don't even want
No, they don't want to see what's obvious. Do you understand what I'm saying to you?
Mm-hmm.
Now, so the Uniform Commercial Codes, now this is dealing with the states, right? And this is where, just before for Prince, the singer,
mm-hmm.
The Usual Thing overdosed, quote unquote. Yeah, right. He did a few interviews shortly before they killed him, within months. And then he started talking about George Washington being the 9th president. They already knew that he had been studying the real history. So now he became a threat. So they wouldn't let him use his name anymore because it's all hypothecated.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when you see him start using the symbol.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. He couldn't even use his own name.
Yeah,
that's Christian Black Codes. Christian Black Codes. It's still in operation. It never went away. And then him, just like many others, just like Whitney, just like Michael, when they start getting control of their own music, they were sacrificed. Because there's insurance policies on everybody by the priesthood. So the people are they're used in service to the Pope of Rome on the land and on the sea. Meaning that if you live physical, they use you up. And if you die, they claim the bondage that's already on the stock market that's fractionalized. So therefore, dead, you're worth millions. And while you're living, they draw the bonds on the trade of your life and projected tithe of future. That means any tax. And so when you become sick or worn out, you're no longer useful to them.
But your
But so now they may kill you. Now, if you have a talent or you have a book, which means like you have a book of songs, talents, etc., your concept is
your catalog.
Your catalog. You're still worth millions to them dead, not just because of your catalog, because the corporate state has a bond insurance on you, etc. Now, the corporate states run by the Circle Church and the Chancery have insurance company on every court. So here these people are actually court administrators pretending to be judges. Because remember, the Republic's overthrown 1861. That's the getting rid of Lincoln.
Mm-hmm.
And so the people don't know that they have been floated water, the sea, the SEA,
mm-hmm.
but SEE. So they're under the Holy See. And so this is where the Uniform Commercial Codes are used in admiralty jurisdiction.
Now, some have been able, like you said, to seemingly
so-called perfect the process of trying to become executor or holder in due course of what? An estate. Now you're dealing back to the land. See, so people's concept of the land is just the aggregate soil, but it's also all inheritances, corporal and incorporeal, all accoutrements, the houses, fences, the water, the jewels, the wealth underneath the land. So they got to give you an artificiality, and this is where the blind faith comes in, or what is known as fiat. They take the land, take the gold, and give you a piece of private, licensed, commercial paper that has no value whatsoever and actually creates debt. Then they claim your estate because you transfer business with it and you sanction it, therefore you consent. And so they say that you were paid, then they steal your land and your estate. This is what they've been doing. That's what they're doing to this very day. This is what has actually manifested at this clash today that you see with some hybrid Europeans trying to restore the republic, like Donald Trump. And then you have Joe Biden, because these are faces representing the corporation. So the masses think that America's the country, the aggregate land. It isn't. The aggregate land is Morocco, under Constitution, under Treaty of Operations. They breached that. And so they're claiming their corporation is the country and therefore hypothecating the goods, which they've been doing under unum sanctum operations and commercial code trade. This is the commercial codes. Uniform. Then keep in mind the hypothecation of the estates of the people with Woodrow Wilson on Jekyll Island. That lasted until 1928. Then they crashed. And then you have Franklin Delano Roosevelt pledging the birth certificates because the world would no longer buy the bonds or the treasury bonds rooted in the marriage certificates because they've been fractionalized to the point of no value. You see? So now the problem that they have now is that the birth certificates have been fractionalized to the point of no value.
So they're almost like become derivatives.
That's what derivatives are.
Oh, okay.
You just now see how they hide it?
Yeah.
You just named what it is. But I'm just saying people who don't know the operation don't know what they're talking about. They don't know the language. Derivatives are.
And you hear this when they're talking about stock market issues. A lot
it
of times
never correlates with GDP.
But even with that, people buying, I'm into silver. I'm big time into silver. So the substance. So people buying silver or stock in a silver mine, and everybody, nothing physical in their hand, but if everybody who wants to buy some stock is buying a derivative of the very same thing. If I say, give me my
they're paying for their own enslavement.
Right. So if I'm asking for my silver,
you won't get it.
I won't get it.
No.
Because it's derivatives. It's here.
No, what they will do, this is their order. They will allege to pay you off with Federal Reserve notes and then bar you from future trade. That's how they control the market, Forex and all the stuff. Mm-hmm. And so now, then they fractionalize it again. And this is what has crashed on the world market. So you'll hear them say the US dollar as reserve currency. You hear that statement, and most people don't know what they're looking at when you hear that statement. They're talking about derivatives. They fractionalize them so much, and they fractionalize the fractionalization and fractionalize that to the value is below zero, which is why you have today operating in the stock market what you call zero interest rate. But you can't go below that. You can, they actually did, but but you know what you going. So what numerical value goes below zero? Or so now you have rogue operations. This is what you're seeing played out. Is what Donald Trump represents? Yeah, is the republic, and what the other side represents is the democracy. They're two different entities. The people's view is that they're fighting for the same office. It isn't.
But is it not true that even though one is D,
you're talking about control of an estate.
I'm going to say D, and I'm going to say D and J.
All right. Yeah.
So what D and J are doing, even though one you would call the
dog and pony show for the public.
Yeah, democracy, and one you would call the republic. The people, we need to know there is corruption on both sides of the aisle.
No, the whole platform is thoroughly corrupt. Right. There is nothing other than corruption.
Right. So a lot of times people are thinking, well, I'm not a Republican. We're talking about the republic that we had as opposed to the.
So they don't know. So let's look at this. The Asiatics here in North America, for the most part, don't know that they are the republic. Right. That's number one. In political operations, they're not aware, for the most part, that our people, all of our people, were always Republican up until the 30s, the late 20s and 30s, when they were promised a piece of land. They were promised a piece of land,
40 acres and a mule,
which they never got.
And then it went over the top when I believe this wholeheartedly, that when Martin Luther King, to whom today is his social,
he apologized.
So yeah. When Martin Luther King was allegedly arrested and was going to get some time, JFK, running for office, allegedly is the only one that reaches out and puts in a good word to get him out. He being a Democrat, people finding out that he extended that assistance to MLK, who was an up and coming, civil rights leader, air quotes. Everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people made the switch because, and he wasn't even a Republican, a Democrat, right. MLK. But a lot of people made the switch by voting for Kennedy based on the fact that he had assisted him getting out of prison. I believe wholeheartedly, and I got it as an intuitive download, that the whole arrest and his reaching out was a setup.
It was
to do exactly what it did.
It was
get the people to go to the democracy or demon
to
party.
Go for the Ku Klux Klan,
the KK,
which is what that is.
Absolutely
against themselves.
And have been,
and haven't had anything to show for it. And if you notice that from that time, let's look at this. Let's look at this from a point of destruction, further destruction, and dissolution of hotels, stores, businesses among our people from 1955 to today.
That's why
you saw it totally dismantled.
In 55.
You see it all dismantled.
Right.
But now the youth coming in, for the most part, don't have reference point. They're only getting the propaganda about the greatness of this marching man. And they're approaching it from a sympathetic and supportive view, not recognizing that it was actually a political sellout. Mm-hmm. So they're looking at the sound good or the appearance of this religious man being sacrificed for the good of the people. And so they're not looking at the real politics. They're also not looking at that he was a Mason. They're also not looking at that he later apologized when he realized what he did. You notice that they don't emphasize that where he apologized. He says, "I've made my people something that's." He apologized. My people are refugees in their own land. That was one of the statements. He's telling them that they're indigenous. See, but being a Mason, he already know that. But you already know telling our people they're indigenous was never part of his teaching. These were areas of his frustration. Then being a Mason, he talked about the mountaintop.
True.
And
I heard, from a person who's done a lot of research, that was a code for a place. There was a location where operatives were trained.
Yes.
They would go. People like he. Matter of fact, I was told others. He and Rosa Parks met there.
Mm-hmm.
So that also says that she was potentially.
Yeah, because Rosa Parks wasn't the real woman.
Right, she wasn't even. It was a pregnant, unwed, darker skinned woman.
Yes, and it was everything. We've been played on multiple levels.
Absolutely.
And also, this is why they won't promote too much. Where he also was having private talks with Elijah Muhammad.
Now there's a movie that came out today. I think it's called One Night or something, and it shows
Night in Miami.
Night in Miami with Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, Sam Cooke, and excuse me,
Muhammad Ali.
No, Malcolm X.
Malcolm X, yeah.
The four of them, because they were all, they were buddies.
They were all connected.
They were connected. They were trying to.
That's why they murdered Sam Cooke, because he was making contributions to the Nation of Islam.
Absolutely.
Muhammad Ali told me about that. Because when he had dinner at my house, some of that corruption there, because remember I told you before, a lot of them people are more pragmatic than our people think they are. Things that they'll say in private, just like we talk, they're not saying public.
True.
Because it would color some of the people that our people look up to. Mm-hmm. Our people's views of their leaders is not this roses and lollipops and love you Jesus type thing that our people think. And it's our people are sort of like naive, starry-eyed, insecure minors in their mentality. And many people would fight to preserve that rather than give them the rude truth.
People get offended when you talk about the heroes that we have been trained
to honor.
And when you come out with the truth, as hard as it is, they can say truth
that
first.
Many of them are compromised.
Right. It has to be made known, because when you can see that,
you got to let it go to move on, to really heal.
And perhaps then now you can also see the truth about other things.
Yes.
You can see the deception in many things that you have put your trust in.
And that's protected. In other words, more effort has been made to protect the images of persons, men and women, who have been designated, assigned to you. Remember, you didn't elect them, assigned to you as your leaders. What election did the so-called, when did they have an election for the so-called black leaders? When?
They pop up and we accept them.
Do they pop up? No.
I mean, when I say they pop up.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And I would say this because I was.
Some do out of the ranks.
Right, but and then they get corrupted. But I was talking, I believe it was to Brother Kush Day out in
mm-hmm.
what do they call Chicago, Mecca? Mm-hmm. What is Mecca? Chicago.
Mm-hmm. That's Mecca.
Mecca.
Yeah.
Brother Kush Day. Shout out to him. I believe when just before I had him on the show, we were talking about, and I asked him a question with regard to former President Barack Obama. Mm-hmm. And the question I asked was, prior to him coming on the scene as his rising, was he congressman or whatever he was, did you?
He was assigned.
Know about him? Was he out there with. He never really heard about him until he kept. All of a sudden, he was.
All of them are placed.
Yeah.
And he was. As soon as he started telling the truth, he was blackmailed. Plus, they had 3 doubles for him. Now, truthfully, according to the record, the original
is gone
in 2014, in a gun battle within the palace.
What palace?
The Casablanca.
We talking about
Casablanca is the White House.
Oh, okay.
See,
all right.
Casablanca,
right.
Morocco, Casablanca,
White House. Gotcha. Got it.
Now,
see, I never heard that one before.
Some of that information may be coming out within the next year, but it's not generally known by the public today, particularly when he really got in trouble when he exposed that that the American Constitution come from Muslim law.
Mm-hmm.
And when Michelle went to the Alhambra, then he signed the rights of indigenous people when he came back. Trouble was after that.
I wouldn't put it past them.
No, because you got to remember, everybody that's in those positions are not them who you think they are. They're placed there. There was not and is not any such thing as election of these people by the people, by the public. Never was. That's another rude awakening that's going to happen with this people. You know, the idea that they're looking at certain things being less than honorable going on right now. No, it's always been that. What you see right now is some exposure. Some exposure of what always was. Just like most of the people here aren't aware that most of the Praters, at least 43 of them, can be proven to be traced bloodline, relative. They're all placed. People's votes didn't count then and don't count now. But it does keep them occupied and keep them from rebelling. See, the key with the priesthood is that the masses must be firmly kept in a state of belief. That's why they always say, they will never say to you, what do you know? They will say, are you a believer? And the people have been trained at that spiritual development or spiritual achievement, when it's actually the opposite. You know how when the anthropomorphic Jesus says, study all things and keep that which is good. That means discernment, doesn't it?
Yes.
And the priesthood say, don't question.
Absolutely.
You see the contradiction?
And telling you right off the bat, there's no error in this. It's inerrant.
Yeah. And then soon they say, you need to know. And as soon as you ask a question, not now, it's not for you to know. We'll tell about what's in the sandwich.
Some literally been put out because they asked certain questions.
Yeah, we'll tell you what's in the sandwich later after you take a bite.
You know, you're disrupting the class. Don't come back to the Bible study because your questions are, ungodly.
And don't even mention Septuaginta. They really throw you out on your head.
Or the Apocrypha.
Yeah, that's it. Or the Book of the Infants, or the books of Mary. You know,
Book Thomas, the Gnostic Gospels.
Yeah,
they don't want
or Enoch, or the 7 books of Moses.
Definitely not Enoch.
Or the 7 books of Moses. Or the 7 books of Moses.
And tell me why some statues of Moses depicts him with horns.
Because it's the moon. The moon goddess.
Oh God.
Or you even see, because we back to the moon calendar, cycle placement of the moon, cycle placement of the earth in relationship to the sun. Because remember, our real calculations of the wise men is by cycle placement. That's true time of the heavens, or sometimes referred to as sidereal. The actual position, because that's how we calculate. That's how the energies are emitted. Even how the womb works. The womb not unlike when you see the nature of life, how the position of the moon gestates the plant life, whether it's tubular or tuber, like root plant, leaf plant, stem plant, or even harvesting. Like you're always talking about, like in the Bible, it talks about gardening, the Garden of Eden, the farmer harvesting, etc. And so the womb works on those same principles. So what has happened with society is that they have actually taught women against themselves, and so women don't look at their womb in harmony with nature and the moon. That's the devil, you see, when actually it's the moon that governs the womb. Therefore, being out of cycle placement, right, or out of time. See, because when you're out of time, you're out of harmony with nature. So then women keep bringing people here sick. Because now the womb is used for a place of sport, not actually a place of harmonic gateway. Now, when you look at,
this is Stargate.
Yeah, of course it is. Now, as an example, when in the Bible, when it talks about the angels administered to Mary and Elizabeth, now Mary and Elizabeth are cousins, right? Mm-hmm. And the angels are administering to them. Now, that is an anthropomorphic expression of actually operations of women who actually understand the use of the womb. That means their sons, Esau or Jesus and John, were actually cosmically prepared by the women with a knowledge of what they were doing. So they were born, they made them literally with a job to do. That's how powerful the womb is.
Why you always say I came here to do what my mother said to do.
Exactly. So when someone who thinks I don't know, or think that I'm in spooky, which I'm not, and try to place me into some kind of box because I'm Muslim, or Ibri, and place me in some kind of box like they can make me or break me. My mother made me, and my mother sent me. And I'm not unclear about any of that.
Here, here.
You can take them sandwiches to the bank. Give me a bite first. But and people who know. See, now let's look at this. Let's look at this bringing us onto the land. Now you understand why they take the breaking of the water and imply that the woman gave birth on the ship on the sea, and why they even call when you dock the ship mooring. Mm-hmm. And then the Pope claims it and claims the child under admiralty law.